inside my mind, you can see the shrine, got you on my wall. Believe it, baby, don't be scared, I want you everywhere.
Please welcome Senior Product Marketing Manager, Kelli Kopec, and Director of Product Marketing, Alex Platia.
Hello to everyone in the room and everyone tuning in virtually, and welcome to this special edition of the Cvent Source at Connect. Alex and I are going to share the latest findings based on how customers are using our event and hospitality platform. But first, let's explain how we get the data we're about to share. It's all based on the powerful network effect our technology creates, and what we like to call the Cvent ecosystem. So let's start at the event cloud on the left side. Internally, this is what we call our event technology that empowers planners and marketers to create amazing events across in-person, hybrid, and virtual formats. We have 126,000 active planner users who sourced 3 million total group RFPs last year.
And with over 309,000 venues on the Cvent supplier network, these hotels and destinations use our Hospitality Cloud platform to reach these event organizers, showcase their unique spaces, and collaborate and plan meetings and events of all types and sizes. Since the inception in 2008, over $140 billion have been sourced through the Cvent supplier network. And because we power the events ecosystem, we have a ton of interesting data that we'll showcase with you today. You can refer to and use these benchmarks and trends to measure and improve your event programs, no matter where you sit in the ecosystem. So now that we've set the context, let's look at some of the recent insights we're seeing across the Cvent supplier network. Through the first quarter of the year, in-person events continue to grow. RFP volume is up 8%, room nights are up 10%, and the proposed rate growth is only up 0.3%. The slow growth in ADR means that the average rate at which hotel rooms are sold has remained stable over the last year. And while this might be good for some of the planners in the room today, it could mean lower revenue for hotels as they may not be able to command the higher prices for their rooms. But let's put things in perspective. Over the last several years, we've seen significant growth in ADR, and if we look back just 1 year, ADR was up 5%. Now, here at Cvent, we're always looking for new organizations to leverage our sourcing channel. Planners, you're the lifeblood of the industry. And there continues to be more and more planners leveraging our tools, both from our loyal customers that source billions and billions of dollars annually, as well as those new organizations using Cvent for the very first time. In fact, we have a team solely focused on our sourcing efforts within existing organizations that use our core event management technology, as well as a team focused on getting new organizations that we haven't historically worked with at all. In 2024, nearly half of the planner organizations sourcing on CSN are new. And these new organizations aren't just mom and pop shops sourcing a meeting space only event for a social gathering. You can see the average room nights proposed by these new organizations is just under 80 peak rooms. This means opportunities for many of the hotels in the room today, not just the large meeting hotels. So as a new planner in the industry, you might be wondering, where do you even start? Well, you need everything at your fingertips, especially the digital tools, in an era where site visits might not be an option and you simply don't have time to spend hours researching a destination or a venue individually. So this is why we built the Cvent Supplier Network, to make it as easy as possible for you to find a venue for your next event. Generally speaking, these planners are sourcing within their regions. As an example, 54% of the planners in the Southeast are sourcing for events venues in the Southeast. And with that being said, when they do source outside of their regions, the Southeast and the Western US are the hotspots. In a couple of minutes, we'll show the top 20 markets who have received the most volume through April across Cvent. Over the last few years, we'd often hear concerns about extremely short booking windows. And we'd see significant shifts in the amount of room nights being sourced in the year for the year versus more than a year out. But this is really beginning to stabilize. The percentage that you see on the screen here reflects when the room nights are being sourced. And for some context here, we've had over 16.5 million room nights sourced through April of 2024. On the left-hand side of the chart in green, you'll see that 45% of room nights have been sourced in the year for the year. 30% were sourced between 12 and 24 months, and 25% have been sourced more than 2 years and beyond. So why is this important? Well, as a planner, this is a good indication that there's a lot of volume happening in the year for the year. And later on, we'll share a bit more on the full life cycle of the event, from the event creation in Cvent all the way to the event start date. Now, let's take a look at how these booking windows change depending on the size of the event. Not surprisingly, the size of the event has a significant impact on when a planner is going to start that sourcing process. On the hotel side, they might be reluctant to book a smaller event that doesn't require a ton of room nights too far out in advance, because it might limit their ability to book a larger event if the meeting space is already accounted for. So as a planner, this might result in fewer bids, more turndowns. So keep the size of the event in mind as you begin your sourcing process. For events with less than 50 peak room nights, the booking window is less than 6 months. For events with 51 to 200 peak rooms, the booking window is roughly 8 to 12 months. And then lastly, for those larger events with 200 plus peak room nights, this is where we've seen the biggest change over the year, increasing from 17 to 18 months. Now, let's hear from Charlene at Cisco, who has seen similar stability in their booking windows from 2023 to 2024.
We haven't seen that big of a shift from 23 to 24. I mean, a little bit, maybe our lead times are down maybe 10 to 15%. But Cisco, and in particular, I think technology, were driven by factors such as acquisitions, product launches. Certainly, Cisco just completed our largest acquisition of Splunk. You might have read about it, $28 billion. So there was a little bit of a slowdown in preparation for that to finish. But as a result, now things are really starting to pop because we have to get out there with the message, evangelize this new integration inside of Cisco. There's a lot of interest globally, a lot of road shows, things like that. And then certainly product launches need to be quick. We average in general about 42 days on a normal sourcing project. And certainly the compression of a product launch, you want to get out to market as quick as possible. So similar than what we saw in 23, but completely driven by other factors out of our control.
What I love about that clip is the speed and execution that Charlene and her team are able to achieve in such a short amount of time. Even more important as they begin ramping up events post their recent acquisition. So we just talked about when these RFPs are being sent out, but what about where are these RFPs being sourced? Through April, across the top 20 markets in the US in terms of room nights received, both RFPs and room nights are up 6%. But what we're looking at here shows how these markets compared to last year. From left to right, you'll notice that Chicago, Nashville, San Diego, Phoenix, Dallas, and Vegas are all up more than 10%. And while we see that Austin, Miami, LA, and Tampa are down, they each saw exceptional growth in 2023, growing more than 25% from that previous year. Now, this gives you a glimpse into the average rates across the top 20 markets. The numbers indicate the ADR in each of these markets for 23 versus 24. And apologies, there's lots of numbers here, and it's a bit hard to read. That's the point. ADR over the last year really hasn't changed at all. And what's interesting here is about half the markets are up, while half the markets are down. Again, pointing back to that stability over the last year. And when you look at this by chain scale, again, you're going to see that while the number of room nights in blue is up across each, the change in the rate growth in purple is rather minimal. And in some cases, it's even negative. So when you factor in all of the above, planners often need to shop around for many reasons. It might be that venues are at capacity, it might be budget. But in some cases, it's not just the venue. They might even be considering multiple destinations. As you can see here, 75% of RFPs are sent to one metro area, 25% of RFPs are sent to 2 or more metro areas, and 15% are sent to 3 or more metro areas. So nearly a quarter of the time, planners are considering 2 or more destinations for an upcoming event. And planners aren't just looking at the United States, we know international meetings are back. Do we have any planners in the room today that have sourced a meeting internationally over the last year? All right. So far this year, more than 110 countries have been sourced by planners in the US, up 5% year over year. More than 1.2 million room nights have been sourced by US planners, up 60% year over year. And over 1,500 US planners have sent an RFP internationally. And when you take a look at the growth in room nights across the world, the Americas lead the way, up 11%. Asia has grown 9%, Europe has grown 3%, and the Middle East, Africa, and Australia have actually seen a slight decline of 6%. With respect to ADR, Europe and Asia are seeing the largest growth, over 5%. The Americas, Middle East, and Africa region are relatively flat, and Australia is down 3%. Easier said than done. It's a lot of effort to create a perfect event. We're all a witness to the hard work put in by event planners and suppliers through our platform. We all know about the challenges and the difficulties that hoteliers have gone through since 2019 due to fewer and newer staff. Planners are also very conscious about collecting responses from a wide range of venues. On average, they include 11 venues across 8 brands for each RFP. In return, 5 venues will bid, 4 venues will turn down the RFP, and 2 just won't respond at all. And since planners are not getting enough of these quality proposals that fit their needs, they're sending that same RFP to another batch of venues roughly 40% of the time. Sending RFPs, evaluating responses, and selecting a venue, it's a lot of work, but that's what makes a successful event. But if you look at why suppliers are turning down the business, 60% of the RFPs are turned down due to unavailability of either guest rooms, meeting space, or date patterns. And if you don't feel like you're getting enough bids back as a planner, take advantage of submitting the RFP with alternate dates. This past year, planners were flexible to accept alternate date proposals on 42% of the RFPs that were turned down. So for all of the hoteliers in the room here today, pay attention to the planner's alternate dates. You might still be able to win that piece of business, or at least start building the relationship for future RFPs. This is one area we're working with suppliers. Small things like this create a better ecosystem altogether. And now let's hear from Charlene on what they're seeing in their RFP responses and what they expect for RFP response time.
Pre-pandemic, we were sourcing maybe 3 to 5 venues, but now we're up to about 8 or 9. That's certainly the hotel compression availability really affects our productivity and the speed at which we can execute on these sourcing and contracting projects. In 2023, we were seeing about a 30% decline. That's cut in half now. And I think that is due to the responsiveness of the hotels, and maybe we are plugging into last minute space availability. Cisco, we don't source terribly far in advance. It's usually about 42 days from notification we need to source to when we are at contract or even at event. Depends on what the event is and the needed speed and message. But we see that the no response has not changed very much. It's gone down from 2% to 1%. So we're very pleased with that the hotels do respond to our RFPs. We also require a response in 48 hours. So we tell all of our hotel partners best and final right away. And we go back to our internal event owner contracts for those decisions really quickly. And as far as success factors, I think using our preferred network of hotels is key. We have pre-negotiated templates with them. That pushes us into contract very quickly. We meet with them quarterly to share the results of the volume of sourcing, what they accepted to bid on, what they declined. Excuse me. We also leverage contract scoring as well. So, for example, we will take a look at how easy it was to work with that particular property on that contract. Were there changes to the preferred template, things like that. So we're happy to share that with the hotels and the brands on a quarterly basis so we can all measure how easy it is to do business. I think that may drive a little bit more interest with our hotels to bid on Cisco business.
The last thing I'll touch on is the life cycle of an event. Now, depending on the size of the event, you'll notice a difference in the duration of the event life cycle. We've plotted out 6 key milestones: the event creation date, the RFP send date, the response due date, the RFP awarded date, the event launch date, and then lastly, the event start date. The average duration of an event created in Cvent to the event start date is 173 days. The size of the event will clearly impact this timeline. And let's hear from Charlene on how quickly their event program goes from concept to reality.
You know, it's all driven by our SMM program and the speed at which we need to go to market in technology and specifically with Cisco. For example, when we are notified we need to go out for an RFP, we will send that RFP to the preferred and other hotels if required within 48 hours. We also require those hotels who are going to bid to come back in 48 to 72 hours with best and final. There is no option for a second opportunity. We go back to our event owners at that point and we say, here are your options, make a choice. We typically like to see them make that choice within 3 to 4 days. Then we move into contracting. We are running right about 42 days for that entire process. And when I say 42 days, that means from the initial request to go out to RFP for an event to when that event begins. And so if you want to back that up in a timeline, if you are going to give your customers 30 days to respond, yes, I want to attend, it doesn't give us a lot of time. So that's why we are so insistent with our hoteliers that they keep to our timeline. We want them to get the business, but they have to come on board our timeline in order to make that work for them. Now, I also want to say this does not necessarily apply to our large flagships, take them off the table completely. But I wanted to give a case study. We just did sourcing for a 2,500 person event. From start to finish of the process was 76 days, including site visit. And that was sourced 9 months before the event welcomes everyone into that ballroom. So we're able to move as quick as possible, and this was a citywide. So I do think Cisco sometimes is very hungry for space, and we're able to fit into some of those special needs, or hotels will post open spaces in Cvent. We really do depend on Cvent. We use everything that you offer for sourcing and contracting. We do showcase, we look at luxury properties, we look at availability, needs, hotel needs, things like that, because we have such a volume and such a speed to work with. So we couldn't do it without Cvent.
So for the smaller events with less than 50 attendees, from start to finish, it's about 4 months. Planners are usually sending those RFPs out approximately 100 days out from the event's start date. And for the larger events with 500 plus attendees, on average, planners are starting that process 1 year out. From the event creation to the start date of the event, the life cycle is going to vary heavily depending on the overall size and the complexity of that event. Okay, so now that we've covered our insights from the Cvent Supplier Network, Kelli will take us through our event marketing and management platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Now we're going to get into some of the event data to see how event organizers are strategizing and executing events this year. First, let's look at the year-over-year comparisons of event formats. You can see the bottom row shows us 2023 data, and on the top row, we're looking at 2024. In 2023, 86% of event programs leveraged in-person events, compared to 91% of event programs this year. 44% of programs contained hybrid or virtual event formats last year, compared to 38% this year. And finally, 9% leveraged all three formats last year, while 8% of event programs are leveraging all three event formats this year. It's clear the trend is shifting towards more programs containing in-person events, while less are relying on hybrid and virtual. And this is one of the key trends we were anticipating at the start of this year: more emphasis on in-person events, with hybrid and virtual playing less of a role. So let's see how this trend has played out over the last year. Here you can see the evolution of event formats starting in January 2022. So at the beginning of that year, in-person events were making up around half of the events managed on Cvent, while around 40% of the events were virtual. As we progressed into 2023, in-person events made up about 60% of all events, while virtual were about 25%. And then all the way up to April 2024, where in-person makes up 71% and virtual makes up 19% of all events. So this means that April 2024 represented the month with the highest percentage of in-person events, but the lowest percentage of virtual events in over 2 years. Now let's take a look at how this trend breaks down by industry. There are a few things I want to call out specific to industry segments. First, the manufacturing industry has in-person events in practically all of their programs at 99%, with third parties managing programs that had in-person events 95% of the time. But they were less likely to have clients with hybrid or virtual programs. Healthcare and education are taking advantage of leveraging all three formats and are most likely to leverage hybrid and virtual. And I wanted to double click on one of the industries leveraging all three formats, higher education, and get a perspective on the value of doing so. So I asked Jeremy Hauser, who's actually at this event, just not in the room today, who manages events at Duke University, to comment on his use of event formats.
Well, I think it's a good question. But for higher education specifically, one of the main forms of engagement is going to be meeting people where they're at. And that, overall mission doesn't mean you have to be in person in order to engage your constituents. So if you can do something that's online, virtual, live, or on demand, you're going to be able to reach an audience that perhaps you wouldn't normally be able to get in a seat or travel for an event, or network, outside of a normal setting. People are busy, they have, other responsibilities and things to tend to, whether it's work or family or home. And so having something that's virtual and across different formats just allows you to engage a greater audience than if you were just limited to in-person events only. I think for education, the slide kind of speaks to itself. Looking at 48, 36, and 16% there, in the education realm, you have people that are engaged, that are seeking out learning opportunities. And learning is not just done in a classroom. It's not just done in a seat. You can do that anywhere. So you can pick up a book, or you can find an on-demand video. You can offer, live stream sessions as well. And that way someone can consume that even if they're halfway around the world, at their leisure or even at the scheduled time. It's just not something that someone actually has to make the room in their plans or a busy schedule to travel to your event or to your location.
Thanks for that, Jeremy, and we'll have him come on a little bit later too. So let's look at how number of events and number of registrations are trending over the past 12 months. On the top row here, you see the number of events, and on the bottom row, you see number of registrations. Each month is compared to the previous year's same month. So, for example, on the top row, let's look all the way to April 2024. We saw 15% more events than in April 2023. And if you look at the bottom row, we also saw 17% more registrations in April 2024 compared to April 2023. So if you look at that general trend, in 2023 we saw more events with around the same registrations year over year. This general trend is holding true in Q1 2024, with March being an exception in the data. So our data is also showing us that across all of our customers, they've been hosting more simple meetings, and I think that makes a lot of sense when we look at the slide we're looking at right now. Simple meetings have been trending up for a few reasons, but the main driver is due to this large, remote work environment where everyone has to get together to engage in person in a smaller format. And we recognize that simple meetings take a lot of time and energy on a planning team, and that's why we're looking at ways to help you all automate the simple meetings management process on Cvent. One way we're doing that is through Instant Book, that allows planners to instantly book sleeping rooms and meeting space directly in our venue sourcing tool. And we also have several other product enhancements coming your way, so you can self-service and save a lot of time on simple meetings. So let's think back to that top row of data from the last slide. When we break down the number of events per industry, we see that third parties and associations are driving the number of events down, with nearly half of those organizations doing less events year over year. Financial services and nonprofit organizations are doing more events, but not at the same rate as other industries. The good news is overall, over half of event programs are doing more events than the previous year. Now let's take a look at the registration trends by industry. What industries aren't getting as many registrants? For in-person events, business services, media and entertainment, manufacturing, and associations are getting fewer registrations than they were the year prior. But travel, recreation and leisure, as well as healthcare, pharma, and biotech events are thriving, with significant increases in registrations for in-person events. We generally see more red across the board for hybrid and virtual formats, but business services, third party, and travel and recreation and leisure remain in the green for virtual and hybrid events. And here, I'm sharing insights into when our customers are starting events based on the event duration and format of their event. We see that in-person events start earlier in the week as the duration of the event increases. For shorter in-person events, planners are choosing Tuesday or Wednesday to start. And for shorter virtual events, Thursday is the most popular start day. So I think we see the leisure trend that Reggie was talking about is still in full effect. In-person events tend to start after or lead up to a weekend. Event attendees are staying before and after events to experience the destination and enjoy leisure time, very much how we designed this year's Cvent Connect. And maybe some of you took advantage and came in early or staying late. And it makes sense that we're seeing customers design their event programs with attendee preferences in mind. So for all the planners in the audience, you should consider including shoulder dates in your room block. And for hotels, you should think about the power of technology like Cvent Passkey, which helps you manage room blocks, upsell lucrative rooms, and work more efficiently with planners. And I want to call out immediately following the session, right next door, we're doing a whole session focused on the rise of leisure and wellness in business travel, if you're interested in learning more. So it's always interesting to see when attendees register for events. Here, we're looking at registration timing by event format. Nearly half of all in-person registrations happen within 4 weeks of the event start date, while 77% of registrations happen within 4 weeks for virtual events. With the majority of registrants for in-person events happening further out than virtual events, you should adjust your sales and marketing campaigns as well as registration predictions to accommodate these behaviors. I know we do that for this event, Cvent Connect. So that really got me wondering when I looked at this data if registrations for Connect align with the timing we see from our customers. For in-person registrations at this event we're at right now, we saw around 20% of all registrants come in within 4 weeks. So that's clearly a stark comparison to the 47% we're seeing on the slide. And this really goes to show you that registration timing varies on the type of event you're hosting. Connect, for example, it's a user conference with very passionate customers like yourselves, and we promote this almost all year. And because of this, registrants tend to register earlier than the standard timelines. And for virtual, we're a little bit closer to the trend we're seeing on the slide. We had over 50% registering as virtual attendees within 4 weeks of this event. Now I want to switch gears and bring Jeremy back on to talk about the interesting ways Duke is extending virtual content and engagement post-event.
So yes, in a limited fashion, we have some of our events, focused on the forever learning aspect or lifelong learning approach that Duke has for its alum. We have some events where we not only have live Zoom calls or meetings, webinars, panels, but also that recorded content is then available on demand once the recording is finalized and finished. That is available through our websites. People can log back in, whether they registered for a particular session or not, and consume that at their leisure. So we have that. And then in addition, there are some programs that we do where we actually use a virtual ticket, a third-party vendor supplies a hosted page, and then we're inviting people to that. For those who can't attend the in-person segment of that, they can attend online for live stream session. They can watch videos. It gives them access to that, and something that you can either offer up for free or you can charge. And people do want to actually engage with the programming that they have, and that some of our teams offer at Duke. And this is a way for them to be able to do that. So they are part of the event. It's a hybrid event, and it's happening concurrently while there are people in the seats in wherever the venue actually is. So although it's a limited basis, we have done that for years before COVID, was around. And so it was really maximizing the overall audience that we could reach with one of our signature programs that we do. And so obviously, like looking at the percentages here on the chart, you can see that it's basically 50-50 and more leaning towards, consuming content online. I mean, I think we all watch videos online, so events should be really no different than that. You're consuming the content. It's really nice, actually, when someone says, thank you so much for sharing your program online. We weren't able to get to the campus. This is a way for us to actually, still feel connected and to see our friends and our colleagues and classmates, actually on screen doing the presentations, even though they're not here to witness it in person.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. And he was referencing the data on this slide. Thank you again for providing those engaging strategies and how you're extending your event content. And I think what's most interesting about this slide that we're looking at is the percentage of attendees watching on-demand content has actually increased year over year. Last year, this slide showed 44% of attendees watched on-demand content, while this year it's 55% of attendees watching on-demand content. So 49% of in-person event attendees watch both live and on-demand content. So I want to emphasize what Jeremy said. It's certainly valuable to provide your live content in an on-demand format to extend and maximize engagement. And these stats are the exact reason we provide most sessions at Connect as on demand for registrants to consume for months after the live events. We even put together marketing campaigns to continue to promote relevant sessions to those who missed it throughout the year. And with that, that was my last data slide. I'm going to wrap up that part of the presentation, but I want to remind you that if you like the data that you saw today, you're in luck. I don't know if anyone in the room has seen the Cvent Source before, but we provide this data on a regular basis through a program called, you guessed it, the Cvent Source. We have quarterly live webinars in North America and in Europe. We also provide a global monthly snapshot report. Alex and I do most of the webinars, so you would hear from us again. So we encourage you to join our programs and understand how events are shifting so you can stay ahead of the trends that we are showing you today. Thank you again so much for joining us in person and those tuning in virtually. We'll be taking some questions from our app now, so if you haven't put them in already, go ahead and put them in the app.
All right, I got a few questions in the app. So Kelli, I think the first one is for you. Do you have any resources that you'd recommend for new planners who are sourcing?
Ooh, we saw the data. There are a lot of new planners in the industry, and I know that's something that I hear a lot from the hotels, that we want the new planners to be educated on events and sourcing and everything like that. So we do have a lot of training resources available through Cvent, Cvent Academy. We have venue sourcing training and the value of using specifically the Cvent supplier network and all of the features and functionality that you need to include in an RFP, which I think is very helpful. So I would encourage any new planners to take our training courses.
Awesome. And just one other one, I think that's brand new for Cvent. We just acquired Reposit on Monday, and I think that's another great resource in case you're looking for vendors for your next events, or even some smaller venues for those next events. So it's another great resource, I think, for you guys to consider checking out and leverage as you're sourcing those events. Okay, next question. What trend are you most excited about?
Okay, I mentioned simple meetings. I talked a little bit about Instant Book. I think that's just one that we're seeing and have been tracking for a couple of years. Simple meetings are trending up, and that is something that Cvent is continuing to invest in because we know that planners and hotels are looking for easier solutions to manage these high-frequency events that require a lot of effort. So I think that's one to keep track of and see if we can create more efficiencies for the group. And the other one, I don't know if there are any partners in the room or agencies. Yesterday I gave a little bit of a roadmap talk and showed a lot of the new features we have with the Cvent supplier network and passkey and event diagramming. And there's a lot of new AI enhancements that help you search for venues, help you complete the RFP or respond to the RFP. So that's another trend I think that we've talked about a lot at this event, and I'm sure every day of your lives you hear about AI, but that is a trend as well that I'm excited about.
Awesome, and I think kind of piggybacking off the AI trend, I think one of the coolest things about where we're headed is, here at Cvent, we sit on a ton of data, much of the data that you saw here today, and that data helps power that AI. So I don't think we're too far off, and Bharat mentioned this earlier, from that world where, as a hotelier, you come into work in the morning, and your RFP can be pre-filled. You can obviously change some of the information in that RFP, but it's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier when it comes to responding to the planners, making sure they're getting their bids back on time, and ultimately working together with those planners to book the events in your venue. And then just one other trend that I'm super excited about is all of the new planners that are sourcing. This is a relationship-based industry, and we have tons and tons of new faces, many of which who are working remotely. So what I love is, when we're able to bring people together in person, really break bread and make those introductions, I think that's an awesome trend, and I love seeing how technology can help bring those groups together. All right. One question here that I think is a really interesting one, because we've talked a lot about technology. So if relationships are important in securing event locations, how does the software facilitate that? And I'll go ahead and take that first. So the software is just meant to make your lives easier. We're not taking that conversation between the planner and the supplier out of it. That is crucial. If you think about this event here today, it started with a conversation, I think 6, 7, 8 years ago at IMEX Frankfurt, right? And here we are today. It's a relationship-driven industry. You still need to make sure that you are having those conversations between the venues and the planners. It's not just sending an RFP. It's not just meant to be transactional. You still need to have those conversations to really develop that successful event and to make sure it's as good as and up to your standards. Anything to add there?
No, I completely agree. We had a session earlier talking about that very same point, that the RFP is really just a way to get your event requirements to the hotel, but pick up the phone and establish the relationship, explain if you're the planner to the hotel that you're really considering their venue and a little bit more about your business, because I think it goes well beyond the technology, and I think the term was don't hide behind the RFP.
All right, so next question. How focused is Cvent on analytics and benchmarking data?
We actually have an entire team of, I got the number from Sunny, if he's tuning in from India, 65 people on our analytics team. So they are evaluating everything that our customers are doing. And that's how we're able to, showcase the data that we show today. And we have so much more of it. I know that a lot of you probably want to know a little bit more specific to your destination or your specific industry, and we do have it. We just can't showcase it all in this format. So if you have a special request, they're very happy to put that together for you. It does take a little bit of time, but we can certainly help you on that, and it is our mission to continue to build our analytics and automate it. So that's what I know the team is working on.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So here we go. Are you seeing growth from just new organizations, or are you seeing new planners from organizations that are already customers of Cvent? I'll take this one. Glad to see there's a lot of questions around the new organizations sourcing through Cvent. So as I mentioned earlier, 46% of the organizations that have sourced so far this year are new. So 54% are repeat organizations. And then within those repeat organizations, 16% of the planners are new. So if you're a venue, it's super, super important to expand those relationships within those existing accounts, because there's plenty of new planners that are sourcing from those accounts. And with that, I think we would both like to thank everyone here for joining us today. As Kelli mentioned earlier, there's a session right after this one in the room across the hall as part of the Cvent Travel Summit. But thank you very much, and please feel free to stop by and ask us any questions as you see us in the hallways this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so mature, got me